Hello, everyone. My name is John from Community Life Church in Catskill, New York, and this is Meals Ready to Eat from the Bible. Please like, subscribe, hit that bell icon to get notified. Facebook, follow us, like us, and everybody, please leave a comment. Thanks. Hello, and welcome back. This is the conclusion of our Destiny series, and it is titled, Your Destiny is Not of This World. You know, the destiny God created for you and for me, of course, is eternal, it's significant, and it's important. And God speaks to all of us through the passages we've been looking at, through the passages we're going to look at today, and through the lives of the saints as recorded in the Bible. And because of that, we can live. We know we can live a life that is effective in spreading the gospel. So we can see how important our destiny is, and we need to know why it's so important, and we need to know how we're to get there. We need to know these things. And of all the things, the most important thing is to know that our destiny is eternal. It is a heavenly thing. It's an eternal thing. And that what we do has consequences, and it can impact the lives of people for many, many years to come, decades, centuries even. As we look at the Bible, we can see that is true. If we look back in history, and we can see that is true. Got a couple of scriptures we're going to look at today. We're going to take a look at them, read through them, break them down, and then wrap it all up. So let's go take a look at what God is saying in His Word today. All right, let's take a look at today's passages. I'm going to read them just quickly through. This is Ephesians chapter 1, 4, and 5, and 11. So this is Paul talking about what God has done, what Jesus has done for us. Even as He chose us in Him before the foundation of the world. Okay, He chose us before the foundation of the world that we should be holy and blameless before Him. In love, He predestined us. Predestined, created a destiny for us for adoption to Himself as sons, and that sons includes boys and girls, through Jesus Christ according to the purpose of His will. And down in verse 11, in Him we have obtained an inheritance, having been predestined, once again, according to the purpose of Him who works all things according to the counsel of His will. So we're destined according to His will, according to His purpose. And then going all the way back into Genesis, where we started, we see that Esau and Jacob had a little fight, and this is Jacob leaving his father's house to escape Esau, and he has an encounter, and this is what he says. Behold, this after the encounter, let me just go back a little bit. He came to a certain place that night. It says in verse 11, he lay down, he took a nap, and he had an encounter with God. And this is what happened as a result of that encounter. God says to him, behold, I am with you and will keep you. Now remember, He's talking to you and to me here, wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. I will bring you back to the place I have for you. For I will not leave you until what I have done what I have promised you. Then Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. And he was afraid and said, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. So we can see through these two passages how God predestined us many, many, many years ago before the foundation of the world. He knew all about us. He created a destiny for us. He gave us a way to walk in it, and He's given us an example through the life of Jacob. When he has this encounter with God, he knows that this is the place that God has for him and has called him to, and God's going to keep him and bring him back to that place. All right, let's break this down, see what's going on here, and what can we learn, what can you and I learn from these passages and from the history of destiny as told to us in the Bible. To begin with, it says in Romans 12:2, and do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may prove what the will of God is. We've seen that phrase a couple of times here, the will of God, that which is good and acceptable and perfect. So this breaks down the difference between our minds, in our minds, between the spiritual and the physical. And there's only one reality, and that reality is the spiritual reality that we all live under. You know, we're not just physical being, we're spiritual, and we are impacted by the spiritual world, and we can impact the spiritual world. So we're not spiritual on Sunday morning only, or not only when you're listening to these videos or at a home group or a small group, but real at all other times. There's no difference there. It is always spiritual. We're always engaged in spiritual things. We're always engaged in eternal things. We're always living and walking our destiny. So what does this mean? What is our destiny? There's always 4 points, and this is the first one. We have this divide between the spiritual and physical is not real. And so we have these 4 points that illustrate what destiny is. And the first one is where you end up here on earth and in an eternity. Where you end up in eternity, do you make it to heaven, is important. So that's something we have to be aware of. We have to live our lives in such a way that we do obtain that eternal reward, and that reward is to be with God in heaven eternally. Who we become is important as part of our destiny, not who and what I am born as, or you were born as, or trained as, or what our culture says we must be. Who I become in light of the call that God has on my life is important, and that is vital. We may see people are born into poverty or as a result of horrific things or have all these bad things happen to them, but who we become in the future, in eternity, is important. Not what I did, not what I accomplished, but who God made me to be. That's very important. How I get there, how I live is important. I just can't say, well, I don't care what anybody thinks, I'm going to do what I want. We have to know that we have an impact on everybody around us, and what I do and say is important. These things have a reality, they have a very strong impact on what's going on around us. So how I live my life is very important. What I say, how I conduct myself is important. So it's important in how I live. And finally, who I bring along. We just can't say, oh, I'm going to make it to heaven. I'm not called to go to heaven, and the heck with everybody else. Who I bring along with me and who they bring along with them, and all that eternal stuff is important. Who I bring along, what my life amounts to is important. What I accomplish in light of the will of God for my life is important. Not my earthly accomplishments, not my job, not my ministry, not how much money I have, but my eternal impact is important. So take a look at a couple of verses from Genesis here. Joseph, first of all, just to illustrate this difference or lack of difference between the spiritual and the eternal, how it's all spiritual. Then Joseph made the sons of Israel swear, saying, God will surely take care of you, and you shall carry my bones up from here. So Joseph is saying to his family, when I die, many years from now, we're all going to get out of Egypt. Don't leave my bones here, because the place God has for us, the spiritual, eternal place in the promised land, is more important than all my accomplishments in the land of Egypt. So don't leave anything of mine here. Take it all up with you when you go to that place God has for you. Don't even leave the bones and the dust in my coffin here. Everything goes to where God promised us, to what God has for us. That's how important your destiny is. Don't leave anything on this earth. Bring it all into heaven with you. We shouldn't have anything that belongs to our culture and to our world left of us when we go to heaven. So don't even leave my bones and dust here. Abandon our earthly destiny, or what appears to be our earthly destiny, for our heavenly and eternal one. And this is, again, what this destiny is. This is Joseph talking to his brothers in the same chapter, just a few verses before, and he says, all those bad things they did to him didn't amount to anything. He says, as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good in order to bring about this present result, to preserve many people alive. So the people of Israel were preserved alive in Egypt because of what Joseph did and how he lived, and then they went back into the promised land and became the nation of Israel. So God had in mind Joseph's eternal destiny, which was to preserve many people alive. Not to be important, not to be successful, not to be rich, but to preserve many people alive. Those things that Joseph did accomplish were used by God to preserve many people alive. But everything we do, we should look at it and say, will this preserve many people alive? What is the impact of what I'm doing on the people around me in eternity? To preserve many people alive is our destiny, is our goal, is important. So, in conclusion, we all have to recognize that all of us have this call, that we all have an eternal destiny, and that this destiny is important. And God is speaking to you and to me, to all of us today, in the Bible, in these passages, and in the lives of the saints that are recorded in the Bible. These are examples for us. They had a destiny. They lived out their destiny. Joseph had a destiny. He lived out his destiny. Isaac had a destiny. He lived out his destiny. Those are examples for us. And we can live a life that is effective in spreading the gospel. You can do it. I can do it because God gives you and me the grace to do it. And that is good news. All right, thanks for watching. You can find us on the web at clchurch.cc. That's clchurch.cc. We meet 10:30 Sunday mornings in 20 West Main Street, Catskill, New York. Hope to see you there, and thanks once again.